Hello everyone, welcome to Hearthstone Meta Hype. I'm Yukro100 with my friend Venga Dragon. How's it going, Venga?
Oh, I am doing very well. I'm glad to be here. Let's do this. What's going on?
What's going on is we're going to talk about the mini set, and we're going to talk about it, we're just going to speculate about it and talk about what I personally and you would want to see released in order to fix the meta or make the meta maybe more entertaining or would just be cool flavor-wise. So, the first thing that I want to talk about, I'm just going to jump right in, is quests. I think that there needs to be something to interact with quests in some way, right? Maybe it's a legendary card, so you only run one copy of it, or maybe it's like a rare card with really bad stats, but an ability that says something along the lines of, like, reset the quest, or destroy, or if they've already completed a quest or something like that, they no longer have their quest reward. Just something to stop them from just infinitely scaling with this quest.
Yeah.
Because the problem with quests is it's super linear, and once you complete it, there's nothing you can really do about it anymore, and it feels like solitaire as they're getting to it. Like, there's no interaction from start to finish of the quest, and there's no interaction from the finish of the quest to the finish of the game.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be, is at some point in there, whether it be like while they're completing the quest, maybe like bump them back one tier, or while they're trying to win the game, maybe be able to disrupt the quest or destroy the passive or something along those lines. I think that would be very helpful for the game because it's something people could run to like actually stop quests.
But the problem with those type of things, like that solution, right, is even in itself, that becomes somewhat linear as well. Because then, you're like, here you go. I got my card that, bump quest back one notch, like, and then everybody runs that. And then it's like, it's like the same old stuff, So it's kind of, that card would have to be really good in order to, it's be really good in itself, but imagine like running that card and then facing an opponent that you don't need that card with. So it would have to have some other effect with it.
I mean, yeah, that's like Acidic Swamp Ooze. It's literally just a tech card. Acidic Swamp Ooze was used to destroy weapons and has always seen a little bit of play. I mean, not a ton, but it's always like been there if weapons are super prevalent in the meta. Like when Doomhammer Shaman was super strong not too long ago and the Rustrot Viper wasn't in the meta yet, people were running Acidic Swamp Ooze occasionally, especially in control decks. They'd run one copy to try to beat it, and this would be the same thing. It wouldn't be run in aggro, it would be run in control decks as like a one copy. Maybe even give it tradable, so it's not absolutely terrible to just draw sometimes and be useless. Maybe give it tradable so you can trade it back, and it's just a nice little tech card to stop quests. And I guess I will admit, saying that you destroy the quest or get rid of the passive, that is actually maybe a little bit too strong. But even if it just slows them down or like negates it for the next one or two turns or something, that would be interesting to me.
I agree. Well,
I do agree with you about it being linear, but at least it would put like a speed bump, a little bump in the extremely linear quest gameplay where you just play cards that complete that quest. And that is literally all you play in a deck. It's not, I don't know, it's just, quests are hard, because quests are fun too. That's the worst part.
Well,
and building towards and getting the reward is interesting. It's just not when there's nothing, like it's solitaire.
I mean, we could call it, we call the card Nerf, right? I mean, isn't that, like, wouldn't it be just called, like Nerf? Because
that's just the card, it's just a spell, Nerf.
Exactly. the spell called Nerf. But I totally agree with you. I mean, I think that the quests are, there should be some disruption cards that you could put in there. And like, for example, Mutinous is like a card that is supposedly a disruption card to the quest. Like just last night, and I disrupted the Command the Elements quest with playing Mutinous and popping off the champion. So I got him and killed him, and that was it. And the guy instantly conceded. So I mean, they're there, but that's like just one way. The problem is with some of the quests, and the reason why I think that your idea is good is because it does bump it back, and it kind of does guarantee that you will at least be able to interact with it and interfere with it. It's just, again, I mean, what quest would you want to run that card against? You'd have to run it against Mage right now would be the card that you tech it in against if you're facing a lot of mages, because the other quests are like anything outside of the Dwarven Quarters quest and the Mage and Warlock and Command the Elements, like those four, you would like you'd basically kill the quests. Like they're almost not playable right now. Raid the Docks is close to being playable, but imagine if there was a card.
Raid the Docks is pretty playable. It's seeing quite a bit of play, actually. I'd say nerfing that. But then that's part of the thing, right? Because you do this and it would hurt the quests that need to be adjusted, need to be adjusted.
Exactly.
But then you're hurting the quest for like Priest. Imagine playing Priest Quest. I've literally played 50 games of Priest Quest over the last 3 days. And imagine doing that, almost finishing your quest, playing... All you need to do is play one 8-cost card, and then they set it back, and now you need to play a 5 and 6-cost card in order to do that. Like, I see your point, and it's very hard to balance these kind of things, because you do something like this to adjust the Demon Hunter quest, the Hunter quest, especially the Mage and Warlock quest, and then kind of Warrior and Rogue. But then you hurt the people who are trying to break the meta and go like Priest or Paladin or Druid quest. And it definitely feels bad. But I feel like at this point it's more worth it to have that counterplay to the quests than to not, because also, who knows, in the mini set or in a later expansion, they might come out with more pirates, or they might come out with new ways of cheating out mana for priests so they can finish their quest easier, or more powerful 1-drops so Paladin can finish it, or more attack cards for Druid to finish theirs. And who knows, they might in the future become a problem, and it'll be nice to have something to counter it. That's just my...
I agree with you. I can't disagree with you at all. I totally understand what you're saying. It just creates a whole new set of balance problems then, right? It's like, and that's why in general the game is so hard to balance, and the developers will have these issues. I had asked somebody on Twitter. I just made like a kind of a rhetorical statement. It was somewhat of a rant, and I said on Twitter that said, what were the developers thinking when they created Quest Mage? Not saying that it's like totally overpowered, but what were they thinking? And I got some answers. Well, there's always been OTK decks and this and that, but I was not really just ranting. I was kind of just saying, like, what were they thinking? Were they thinking that it was going to be this OTK deck, or did they think that it was going to be hard to complete? So there's a lot of things that go into balancing and thinking about things. It's just not easy. I wouldn't want to be Team 5, doing that,
Yeah. But I remember when we were first talking about it, we were actually saying that the Mage quest would probably be one of the harder ones to complete.
Yeah.
You got to play 9 different cards. We just forgot how much draw Mage has and how cheap all their cards are, so that way they can finish it super fast. But that was probably what was going on in Team 5's head when they were thinking about it. Like, oh, they have to play 9 fairly different cards. Sometimes they'll dead draw. They have to target minions in order to finish the quest in some cases. So, like, sometimes the opponent won't play minions. But I don't know. And that brings up another point, like, what were they thinking? I think that all the time about Mage and also Warlock. Like, you fundamentally change how the game works by giving them a quest that makes fatigue hurt the opponent. Like, at its very core, there has never been a card in Hearthstone that has done something like that. There's been some cards that have delayed fatigue. There was the one, I think, 8-mana 7/7 that gave you 10 cards in your deck. There's been Dead Man's Hand. There have always been cards that delay fatigue, but there has never been a card that literally allows you to use fatigue offensively.
Right.
There was Niru, or whatever his name was, the one that summoned the portal and a ton of demons, but you still took damage from fatigue, so you were still on a clock. But the Warlock quest, even if it was extremely balanced, even if it was even just bad, I feel like on a fundamental level, changing how the game works in such a drastic way like that is not good.
Right. Well,
like, yes, it's crazy and unique, but that's just one of the fundamental rules of the game. You usually don't want to fatigue. You'll take damage if you fatigue. That's literally like how control decks win. If you give a deck the ability to weaponize that, you can no longer play control decks in the meta. Like, you just can't. And that's part of the reason why haven't been played like at all.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say that the quests in their essence are basically opposed to what the sacrifices are of the cards in the meta now. For example, Overload, right, is your sacrifice as a shaman. And it becomes your strength as a shaman. You get to now Overload, and that helps you complete something. So I'll be honest with you, we didn't really want this video to become like a place where we're bashing it, but I really don't like the quest because they take away the sacrifice. There's no sacrifice in commanding elements. There's no sacrifice in the Warlock quest, right? The problem becomes your win condition, and it's just kind of wrong. I just think they're just badly designed, and the mage, like, the spells are too inexpensive, right? So it's easy to complete.
And then you can make them cheaper too. Like, they're already cheap spells.
Yeah.
But then you make them free, basically, with Incanter's Flow.
Yeah. So the quests are poorly designed, and if we go back to the mini set to say, hey, listen, like, what would we want to see in the mini set in order to counteract these quests? Well, maybe the answer is that we just want to see cards that are playable and competitive and not necessarily overly aggressive, right? But
just something to change the meta, actually.
Yeah,
just anything.
Like the way to counter the mage is fast, right? You want to kill him quick. That's what you have to do, right? So that doesn't add any control. Like, you can't add like a control card into the meta that will counteract that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like time, control needs time. And
yeah.
So it's,
well, I mean, if you give them if you give the game like a neutral early game card that can disrupt the quest, like, you could run that in control and disrupt it early, maybe. But yeah, I see your point. It's gonna be hard.
Yeah, like, I mean, even it could be a card that, like, will, more cards like Shenanigans, right? That change the draw into a banana. Banana, excuse me. Yes, a banana. Yeah. Yes. I forgot. I play a deck with squirrels and acorns, and I forgot about the bananas, of course. So something like that. Maybe, like, draw 2 cards. The next card is, like, very expensive or something. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like your next card drawn is 5 mana more or something. Your opponent would have to do. So at least maybe there's a timing element to it, and I really don't know.
Yeah.
Like, like, it's just, it's just. If the person's not playing the quest, then that card, like, certainly those cards could be completely dead.
Yeah, and I feel like that's good for tech cards. Like, tech cards are supposed to be really good into certain things, but if you draw them normally, they're not that good, and I feel like that would be nice. And then one other thing, because we've talked about this a lot, but there's one other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of what I'd like to see, is a different kind of interaction. And that interaction is hand interaction.
Yes.
So there's already a card that increases the cost of spells, and then there's Mutinous that eats a minion. But I'd like there to be one that just, like, maybe discards 1 card. Just, like, play this card, your opponent discards 1 card. And I know that would feel really bad, but there needs to be, or maybe specify, have it be like a spell, because Mutinous eats a minion, have 1 card to eat a spell, maybe make it like 5 or 6 mana. So that way it's not like super late game, but it's like mid game, so it's still going to be an investment to play. And I don't know, just something to... It just feels like so many games are hopeless and there's nothing you could do. So if you add something to interact with the opponent's hand, yes, it will suck when it's done to you.
Yeah.
But at least if you're playing against someone, you won't have this sense of, like, helplessness going into a game. You're like, okay, maybe they'll discard this lucky card with this. Maybe I can get one of their ignites so they have less infinite damage. Or maybe I can get a fireball and dodge 9 damage. Or maybe I can get a raise dead so that way they're not able to resummon 2 flesh giants and progress their quest. and then kill me the following turn. Like,
I get it.
It would just be nice.
Right, like, well, like, there's a card that's called Fell Soul Jailer, which is a Warlock card, right? And the battle cry on that is your opponent discards a minion, and the death rattle is return it, right? So that's disruptive to some degree. It's
Yeah, the only problem with that is that when it's killed, they get the card back. So they just kill it the next turn,
right,
and they get the card back immediately. Like, if it didn't give the card back, or like death rattle, give the card back in like 2 turns or something, so like it delays that card.
Yeah.
Then maybe it would see play, but it's just, also it would only be really played in like a control deck because it's not very fast, and we've already said control decks are not really good right now. Like, I think it needs a little bit more support, but that's just my opinion on all of it. I think that there just needs to be interaction, because that's the biggest problem right now. It's solitaire and very polarizing.
How about add to the battle cry or Fell Soul Jailer, if not killed within 1 turn or 2 turns, silence death rattle. Silence is itself. So it does take the card out. But yeah, I get what you're saying, man. What about, is there a 4th point or anything that you have on that?
I guess the only thing is just in general, the thing I would like them to address is the polarization and the solitaire of the game. Like, right now, it doesn't feel like what you do really matters. I've already said this a couple of times, but just change that. Like, even if it's not necessarily what I'm saying, but doing something to the meta that changes the style that we have now to just make it so that way it's not like, okay, this deck will always beat this deck, or this deck will always beat this deck. Like, I don't think, I mean, I've played a lot of Quest Priest, and I've played against Mage like 7 times, and I'm 1-6 against Mage. And every game feels helpless, and the only game that I ended up winning, they were dumb and overdrew their quest on accident. They had 10 cards. They played first Flame. It gave them a second Flame, and then they overdrew their quest. Like, I should have lost that game too.
Wow.
So it just feels like these games are helpless, and I want there to be some way to either interact or something else comes out that's better than Quest, which is very scary to me. I don't really want to say that because I feel like if we get something better than Quest, it's going to be even more ridiculous. But something to just make it to where I feel like my plays matter, and just decrease the polarization. Just give some counterplay so bad matchups aren't like 0-100. They're like 30-70. Like, there's some hope. I don't know.
I get you.
That's my thought process on it.
I'm with you on that. We're going to talk about a little bit more about like classes and kind of like what we'd like to see. There are some things that could be added to other tiers of decks that are out there. So when we go into the second segment, we're going to talk about like tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 decks. It's kind of like what the mini set could bring and make these classes that are in those tiers better. So we'll get on over there.